Up in the right-hand corner, there should be a thing that says AV pod. And then there's a
There we go.
There we go.
I think I got it.
There we go. Thank you very much. Welcome, Jessica Vaughn.
Thank you.
For agreeing to do this. I am Melissa Erickson. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Public Schools. And as I explained on the phone, the reason that we're doing this is without any kind of face-to-face meetings with candidates. A lot of the formats seem to have been the same, which is a Zoom panel where you all are asked very similar questions. You give very similar 2-minute answers. People feel they know your elevator speeches very well, but they don't know something more in depth. And so since our supporters are all supporters of public schools, the school board is the race they're the most interested in. So we're going to go through today. The only time limit is you have a 20-minute time limit total once I ask the first question. If you don't get past the first question, but you talk about what you want to talk about so that the information is out there, that's the goal. So we can get through all 7. I have 7 questions to guide the conversation, but it's mostly about you putting out there what you think the voters should know. And I do have questions to guide you just to keep the conversation flowing if you don't have specific things you want to say. Are there any questions on the format?
No, I'm sorry in advance if my dogs bark with this COVID kind of thing. It's really hard to find a place where I can get where it's completely quiet. So in advance, I'm going to try to stop that. But if they bark, I apologize.
I think everybody is kind of understanding kids, dogs. I had a candidate from Pinellas the other day, and his son walked in and death, and the child was like, it just kind of happens. So
right.
The questions will pop up on the screen. So for everybody, this is Jessica Vaughn. She is running for Hillsborough County School Board District 3. So that is in the northeast quadrant of the county, and it spreads a little bit out towards the west. So if we want to get started, the first one is tell me what you love about public schools.
Goodness. Well, I love the fact that, one, they're accessible, that they're free, that they have procedures built into them so that they're standardized. One of the concerns I have when we look at privatization is that with private boards, you can't put in the same protections, non-discriminatory clauses, or things aren't standardized. So I love public schools that you know what to expect. Everybody's on, working towards the same standards. They have the same policies that they're under. There's not a lot of room for different opinions or, too many things to kind of change the format of what you expect. I love that they're accessible to everybody. Part of what I think makes our country so great is that, we say to everybody that you're allowed to have a free, quality public education, and that when you start to privatize things, the quality changes and the accessibility changes. So I love that public schools guarantee both the quality and the accessibility.
Okay. Question number 2 is, what are the attributes of an effective school board member? Which attributes are your strengths and which do you struggle with?
Feels like a job interview over and over. Can I see that question again?
Absolutely. The question is, what are the attributes of an effective school board member? Which attributes are your strengths and which do you struggle with?
Okay. So when you break down the job of the school board member, one, it's to manage the budget. So it's having some concept of what a budget looks like, how budgeting works, I think is important because that's one of the main roles. And for the past 4 years, I've been elected to my CDD board, which is in my neighborhood, we have extra taxes the developers built in. So to manage those extra taxes and the infrastructure, the public elects a CDD board member, and we manage a $5 million budget. And I've been on that for 4 years, which is how I understand that. Usually at a meeting, you have your budget before you, and every single meeting you look at the budget and you know what to expect. So when school board members have deficits and they don't understand that, that's confusing. But so there's the budget, which I have budgeting experience. Also, then there's writing policy and understanding how education works. So I think that aside from having budgeting experience, you have to have people who understand, sorry about that, education and have been in the classroom, who understand, I have a degree degree in education. I taught in the classroom for a couple years, and then I've been a sub for 6 years. So, aside from just even being in one school, I've been in many schools, and I've been in many different environments. I've taught as the the media specialist, the music teacher, the PE coach. So I've experienced all of that. So I think being able to write policy about education, you have to have experience and be familiar with education. I think sorry, did you have more questions?
I thought you were pausing. Keep going.
I've got a lot to say. That's one of my things I need to work on. I think that being a parent helps, being a parent and understanding the frustrations and understanding as a parent, what you're really advocating for and what you value as far as education is concerned. Especially, I say this a lot, but it's really guided my choices as I have a neurodiverse student, and when you're looking at parents who have non-typical learners, that's a different experience than parents who have typical learners. So I think being a parent helps. And for me, building relationship with the community and making sure that you're engaging the people that you're making policy for, making sure that you have a relationship and you're engaging parents and teachers and support staff, and that the board is transparent and that, everyone in your community feels connected to the decisions that you make is one of the most important things of the school board, being a liaison. And I believe that with my community organizing experience, which I've had for the last 5 years, building several different organizations and having outreach and working around the issues and educating voters, also prepares me for that. So there's a lot of reasons why I think that I'm the candidate for this job. As far as weaknesses, obviously I can be a little wordy. I have a hard time kind of sometimes cutting information down and making it shorter, and chunking it down, as teachers would say, for it to be digestible for voters. I feel like we have a lot of complex questions we're asked, and being able to just come up with kind of words that can explain that in a minute or two to really convey solutions to the problems is probably something I'm not that great at. Also, self-promotion isn't something that's normally something I'm very good at. Constantly standing up and being like, this is why I'm number one, isn't something that comes natural to me. So I've had to push myself outside of my comfort zone, definitely to be a candidate. So hopefully that answers the question.
Again, your time. You have to decide. I'm just giving you the forum. So
I'm not used to this.
The Alliance for Public Schools is a family and community engagement organization. So we want to know what role you think family and community engagement plays in public schools.
Oh my goodness, so much. You can even just look at the difference in our schools and look at the difference in some of our schools where there's more of a connection and you have more access. It's huge. Families being able to support students, being able to communicate with teachers, being able to give the school or get resources for the school if the school doesn't have it. I'm just a huge believer in general that our community should be connected and that we are all connected. So making sure that the community is connected to our public education, to our school board, to our schools is paramount. When you look at some of the solution for a lot of achievement schools in general, a lot of it comes within, the issues within the community. If you have a community that has less resources, a lot of the time the communities that have less resources are where you're looking at your achievement schools. So you really have to look when you're talking about achievement schools and building the community and making the community connected to the school so that they support each other. So I think it's paramount and vital that the community and public schools and the schools are all connected.
Okay, the next question is, oh, no, I hit the wrong button. The next question is, if you are elected to serve this term on the school board, how do schools, the district, and the community look different in 4 years?
That's a good question. Number one, right off the bat, again, at the forefront of my platform is making sure that we rebuild our relationship with the community. So making sure that we have meetings at accessible times where teachers and support staff feel like they're encouraged and welcome to come, that it's not on the day they're contractually obligated to be at school or at a time where it's really hard to get to. Making sure that we're reaching parents and we have an open dialogue more, even when we're talking about the recent surveys that were sent out, we're trying to get as much data about reopening. I feel like we could have done a better job in communicating with parents and reaching parents who aren't necessarily as technology savvy as other parents. So one, making sure that we are more transparent, that we have a different relationship with the community. If people are paying attention, a lot of the time the relationship between the school board and the community is combative. Teachers don't feel heard, support staff doesn't feel heard. Parents don't feel heard. When you do things like you limit public comment, or you take that off of the internet, or you make it so that people can't see public comment, or you limit the meetings or the access, I think people feel like you have something to hide and they feel disconnected. Making sure that we're out in communities, that we are having roundtables and forums, and we're just getting as much input and making that relationship as strong as possible. I definitely know that is what would be different. Budget-wise, I have a lot of ideas about the budget. That's kind of at the forefront of everything. It's not the thing that people want to talk about, but unfortunately, that kind of guides all of our decisions, is whether or not we have the money for things. So again, making sure that we're looking at the budget at every single meeting, making sure that, we're really investigating things that we approve. For me personally, when we already are in financial straits, buying $4 million reading software when we already have reading software, as opposed to looking at hiring reading coaches and having a robust reading program, that would be a good supplement if we could afford, isn't a priority. Or when you look at some of the internal positions and how much internal positions the people for those internal positions make compared to teachers is something that we can discuss. Or when we're talking about even sources of revenue, right now there are several programs at the federal level that are being offered to municipalities to kind of help with this COVID, that a lot of municipalities aren't even looking at how they can guarantee or have access to these loans that a lot of times will be forgiven to amp up their revenue. So I think making sure that our budget is obviously, one, more transparent, and that we're making better choices when we're talking about the budget is a definite change that we would see 4 years from now. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you keep going. Your longer pauses are throwing me. I apologize.
Sorry about that. Sometimes you have to process.
That's okay.
Again, I talk a lot about infrastructure, so building some more infrastructure. I would like to see some more fleshed out committees where we have more engagement from parents and, from teachers, where we're all kind of coming together, and we have subcommittees that really give more input, I think would be important. Making sure that we have a better social media.
You got softer if you did something on your computer.
Is that any better?
Yep, that's better. You were good before, and then you got softer.
So making sure that we have better infrastructure, making sure that, I was looking at our diversity committee, and I think even our diversity committee could, have some more important changes as far as making sure that we're recruiting, more diversity when we're talking about teachers even, and the people that we have in our classrooms. So actually, making sure that we have policy that supports everybody in our school system, I think would also be a change that we'd see, is some different policies more aimed at supporting teachers and school staff and getting their input on things.
Okay, I want to let you go. You've gone under 10 minutes. You have 9 minutes left. Just
okay. Sorry.
I just let the people know. No, you can keep talking. Not everyone's got through the questions. I just want to let you know.
Thank you.
School board member are you, and will you be if reelected? I apologize. This was left over from the last one and I didn't fix it. So what kind of school board member will you be?
Okay. Well, just the same kind of person I am in general, which is super open, very transparent. I would like to be reflective. So I think, again, I know it sounds like I'm coming back to this, but for me, just as a candidate, making sure that I'm talking to everybody in my district and making sure that I'm hearing the voices, making sure that I'm getting input. Even now in my campaign, instead of just coming out and saying, here's what we should do, generally what I do is I pose a question on my social media. What do you think? How do you feel about this? If we had extra money, what would you prioritize? And I try to get as much feedback and really be reflective as possible. Also, one of the things I've noticed is I think that a lot of elected officials in general just have very thin skin. And when they get any criticism, they kind of tend to try to defend themselves as opposed to leaning into it to really make them better. So a candidate who isn't afraid of criticism or pushback or questions, or a school board member, not a candidate, who can lean into the criticism and use it to really have important discussions and have as much information when we're making decisions is going to be paramount to what kind of school board member I am. Sorry.
You're good. So the next question is, what are the responsibilities of the school board and individual board members related to public education advocacy?
Oh gosh. Well, for me, just in general, education is everything, right? Knowledge is power. So I think even just as a candidate, keeping voters and especially parents when you're running for school board and teachers educated is the most important thing. So on my platform every single day, on my social media every single day, I have information about where you can access the surveys, how long we have until those surveys are closed, what data we're using as far as making decisions on schools. Sorry about that. Cody! Shh. Sorry about that. Data as far as the decisions that we're making on schools. So I think keeping voters educated is the most important thing. A lot of times when you have a big pushback from your constituency, it's because the voters don't necessarily have the education on the issues. So you don't always necessarily just have to be reflective as far as getting the input, but then it's your job to educate voters so they have as much information. Because a lot of times when the voters get the information and they really understand everything, their viewpoints change and it's not so combative. So for me personally, making sure that all of the voters, parents, teachers, everybody has as much information as possible and is connected is one of the most important things as a school board member in general. And advocating for things that are going to make our schools better. That's definitely something I'm not afraid to do.
Okay, so you have just about 5 minutes for the last question. So you've done well with your time overall. Oh, where did the last question go? Let's go back there.
Come here.
There we go. What public education advocacy? I apologize.
No, there's a lot going on.
There we go. There's the last question. And I've done this. I would think I knew how to do it by now. I've been doing this for 4 days. Okay. So the last question is, what does constituent outreach and constituent services look like under you as a school board member?
Well, I think that finding a way that you're outreaching where it's not just focused on one group of people is important. Like I said, if there are parents who have less access to technology and the only way that you communicate is through social media, you're doing yourself a disservice. So you have to make sure that you're out in the community, that you're at different forums and different areas where you're accessible, making sure that you are accessible through social media for people where that is, their main modality of accessing their school board members, making sure that you're available by phone. I think accessibility is really the key. And I make myself as accessible as possible. I give my phone number at the end of every form. I give my email. I always answer my phone most of the time if you're calling, not my home number, but my cell number. So I try to make myself as accessible as possible.
Okay, that is the end of the questions. So you have 4 minutes and 24 seconds or whatever is left when I finish. So if there's anything that you haven't said that you feel is important for people to know about you, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry about all the distractions. It's a very challenging time running for school board when you've been self-isolating for months in a house with everybody. So again, my name is Jessica Vaughn. I'm running for District 3. My elevator speech is, with all of my budgeting experience, being a parent, being an education, someone passionate and trained in education, and being a community organizer. I have all of these skills for the school board. Obviously, my platform is revolved around school safety, and when we're talking about that holistic school safety, making sure that we're making the board transparent and accessible, making sure that we're making the best policies as possible to support our school staff and our teachers and our parents. making sure that the balance is as healthy as it could be in budget. Personally, for me, because of my experience, I'm extra passionate about students with disabilities or non-neurodiverse students, and making sure that we're supporting those. And I have a lot of ideas when we're talking about this move to privatize education and these charter schools that are kind of being shoved down our throats. First of all, let me say that I'm against charter schools, for-profit charter schools, that I am passionate about public education and saving public education, that I'm extremely concerned with this move to privatize education and what that's going to do to our society and what that's going to do to our students and to our already marginalized communities. I'm concerned that this whole school choice is being sold, to parents who feel like they don't really have any choices, but really what it's done is it's allowing these private companies to water down all of the details of education. Some of these schools don't even have to have a college educated teacher in the schools in some of these charter schools. They can allow, teachers right out of high school. They can have discriminatory policies against hair texture. The whole push to privatize education is something that has propelled me to really run for school board. But if we are going to have to utilize some charter schools, Cody, just based on the state and the funding that they're trying to give us. Sorry about that. If I lock them in another room, they're just as bad. Let me try to go into another room as I run out of time. You get to see my house. If we are going to utilize charter schools just because that's where all the funding is, I think that we need to use them for what they were originally created for, alternative education ideas where we can have the freedom to try Montessori-style programs, Waldorf programs that are really geared towards students who aren't, typical learners, who have had trauma, and try out these forms of education and then bring them back to our classrooms. And they should only be not-for-profit, and they should be agreeing to all of the protections that we have in as far as protecting students with disabilities or marginalized communities or non-discriminatory policies. So I think that is something we're not really talking about as school board candidates, the danger of the privatization and these charter schools and these vouchers and what that means to us, and how we can shift that narrative to maybe use some of these charter schools to offer alternative education to people who normally aren't able to afford it. They have a charter Montessori school in Pasco, and it does very well, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. So I would like to see some of this alternative education being offered to students and parents who can't afford it, if we're going to have to be pushed in that direction as far as when we're talking about funding, because unfortunately the state just has really done a number on making sure that we don't have enough funding for public education. So
you have 12 seconds.
You get to see my whole bedroom. So that's about it. Hopefully this resonates and you vote for Jessica Vaughn on August 18th, 2020.
Okay, thank you so much. We are, I gotta dismiss it. I have one more to do tomorrow morning, and then we will be posting them all. We're doing, because we work in multiple counties, we have all of Hillsborough and Pinellas races that we're posting videos for. When they go up, I will email you, now that I'm not going to your spam anymore, to your address. And if you want to, post the video, we will be sending it out to all of our subscribers. So the Hillsborough ones will go out to all of we have a list of about 18,000 people in Hillsborough County that this will be going out to. And then we'll also be promoting it on social media. So when the link is up, I will send it to you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Sorry,
have a great
night. It was such a chaotic mess.
It's life right now.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.